Another overtime. I am so sleep deprived. Game 4 of the Battle of Ontario was once again a tight one which went all the way to overtime, with the Toronto Maple Leafs having won just one single elimination game in 12 attempts dating back to 2019. It's clear that big post-season must-win games are a struggle for the Leafs team. They're heading back home now to try and clinch it in 5, but what went wrong in Game 4? Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Victoria. I talk everything hockey and Toronto Maple Leafs from across the pond in Scotland, and after every Leafs postseason game I share a recap and my thoughts on the game. Game 4 is of course the Leafs' first loss of this series. The Ottawa Senators take it 4-3 in overtime. The Leafs didn't play badly this game by any means, but they also made some crucial errors and mistakes which ultimately cost them the game and prevented them from closing out the series, which is really unfortunate. The game starts off at a good pace, as has every other game in this series. There were a couple shots at each end for both teams, but nothing particularly dangerous. And then the Leafs' first mistake of the game comes in the form of a Max Domi penalty. Domi, for whatever reason, decided when he was taking the face-off to just lift his stick up right into the Ottawa Senators' face, which is just something so avoidable and something really reckless to do in a game like this. You have nothing to gain from doing that. There's no momentum gained by the team. It was just something really stupid to take. And ultimately, lack of discipline is what cost Ottawa in Game 1, and the Leafs slightly fell victim to the same thing last night, although to a much lesser degree of course. But this Max Domi penalty, in my opinion anyway, was completely unnecessary. I don't know why he decided to do that. It was an odd choice to make. And from that, on the power play, Stützle scores the first goal of the game and the Ottawa Senators take the lead. It's just really frustrating to see penalties like that being taken in a game that is so important. Discipline is something that needs to be top priority, really, and you don't want to give the refs any excuse to give you a penalty in a game like this. So that was very frustrating to lose a goal because of that. Ottawa almost got it in the net again, but between, I think it was McCabe and Stollarts combined, they did manage to keep it out, but it was a close call. And then the Leafs go on the power play, their first power play of the game, and it's a complete disaster, to be honest. The Senators managed to score short-handed and make it 2-0. Two goals that both were the result of Leafs errors. First one was a lack of discipline, second one was just that their power play got a little messy and they allowed the room for a short-handed goal. Of course, this doesn't detract from their overall performance as a team. In the Colorado-Dallas game last night, Dallas did exactly the same as the Leafs and Colorado managed to get a goal short-handed, so it's not the mark of a bad team, but it's just unfortunate and it feels more preventable than a 5-on-5 goal or a goal on the Senators' power play. However, John Tavares to the rescue once again, and he manages to put the puck in the back of the net before the end of the first period, which means the Leafs are only trailing by 1 going into the second, and it's a 2-1 game. Starting the second period trailing is never a good thing, but then John Tavares also got a tripping call, which put them on the penalty kill. However, soon after, Ottawa were called for interference, which gave us 4-on-4 hockey, and then the Leafs actually went back on the power play once again, but none of these power play opportunities resulted in a goal. For almost the entire first half of the second period, there were no goals until at the 10-minute 12-second mark when Matthew Knies manages to tie the game up. Matthew Knies feels like an absolute gem that the Leafs managed to pick up. Second rounder, he's a great power forward. He is exactly the kind of guy that you want on your team, and he is such a benefit to the Leafs. They better re-sign him and they better do it quickly. So we're tied up once again. By the end of the second period, it is a 2-2 hockey game. It feels like the Leafs have got back on track despite their first period mistakes, and so we go into the third and I am very, very nervous. This third period had high stakes at either end. The Ottawa Senators wanted to cling on for dear life. Meanwhile, the Toronto Maple Leafs were hoping to clinch their spot in the second round. However, 7 minutes minutes 32 into the third period, David Perron manages to score for the Senators. A wrist shot that finds the back of the net, and once again the Leafs are trailing, which is really the story of this entire game. You don't want to be the team that's constantly playing catch up. However, at the 14:31 mark, William Nylander makes a fantastic pass to Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who hits a snapshot home, making it a 3-all hockey game once again, and this is just a roller coaster. There were no penalties in the third period. The Leafs really piled the pressure on at the end of that third. It did look like they could take the lead in regulation still, but it wasn't meant to be, and for the third time in 3 games, we were once again headed to overtime. It felt like another nerve-wracking overtime. Surely the Leafs can't keep winning it in OT. Surely the luck runs out somewhere. John Tavares then went off the ice. He got an elbow to the head and he went off. He did eventually come back on, but not before the Leafs went on the power play for 4 minutes. Drake Batherson was given a 4-minute double minor for a high stick on Chris Tanev, and it seemed like a pretty sure thing that the Leafs would be able to score. 4 minutes on the power play in overtime is a gift that is a rare one to come by. Not that it was a gift, it was a perfectly valid call and there was blood and there was whatever else, but it's a rare circumstance to be in and something that you really have to make the most of. And given the Leafs power play has looked so strong in this series, I thought this has got to be it. This has got to be the moment. And it wasn't. Their power play didn't look nearly as impressive as it has in other points throughout this first round, and I feel like John Tavares was ultimately the missing link. It just didn't look the same without him, and I think you can't underestimate the impact that Tavares has both on the team in general, but especially on the power play. Overtime continues on, and with just a couple of minutes left, Jake Sanderson finds the back of the net off of a wrist shot, and the Ottawa Senators hang on. They live to see another day, and they're headed back to Toronto to play a Game 5. The Leafs actually outshot Ottawa 34-21 in this game, which is a reverse of what's happened in other games where the Leafs were massively outshot. It sometimes does prove that while getting pucks on net is important, high danger chances are more important. The Leafs were pretty consistent across the game. They had 9 shots on goal in the first, 9 in the second, 8 in the third, and 8 in overtime. Meanwhile, Ottawa really struggled to get pucks on net for a while, so it was just really unfortunate for the Leafs. The Leafs special teams were definitely an issue in this game. They were given 4 power play opportunities and they couldn't capitalise on any of them. Meanwhile, Ottawa were given 2 and they did manage to get 1 power play goal. The Leafs were also out-hit 44-29, so they were definitely less physical on the play in this game. However, they did block more shots than Ottawa did, so they were definitely still putting their bodies on the line. Overall, it was a very tight game that really could have gone either way. I still feel like that Max Domi penalty was just a really bad way to start the game for the Leafs. It felt avoidable. It didn't look like Ottawa were going to score 5-on-5 prior to that, so it's really unfortunate that Max Domi took that penalty in my opinion. They also need to get their power play back on track, because having 4 minutes in overtime when you're on the power play is just such an opportunity, and it's such a shame they couldn't capitalise on it. It's really not a huge problem that the Leafs didn't take it in 4, although I do want to finger point a little at the people that took the Brooms to the game last night. I saw those posts, and what the hell? What kind of jinx is that? Come on, we don't do that. We don't do that. I originally thought the Leafs would take this series in 6, but I really hope I'm wrong and they take it in 5, and I don't see any reason why they can't, because they were very much still in that game. There were definitely some flaws in their game last night, but hopefully they can clinch their second round spot and they can do it at home, which is always better. So there you have it. That is my recap and my thoughts on Game 4 of the Toronto Maple Leafs versus Ottawa Senators series. Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought of Game 4. Also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and like this video if you did enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back soon with more hockey chats from across the pond. Bye guys.